I think to classify something as a silver bullet is maybe a little extreme. And it's actually a strategy of all of the elements of fuels being part of the energy mix. There is no doubt that renewables play a role, and they will be part of the way in which we go towards a lower carbon economy. That being said, you do need the capabilities of hydrogen, nuclear, natural gas, oil, other hydrocarbons to actually provide that energy mix, because you need to make sure that you have sustainable, affordable, and secure. And alone, renewables won't be able to provide that.
It's that pragmatism you're bringing to the conversation,
Correct.
right? We need to be realistic.
Yes.
Yeah? Marco, you're a commodities trader. I was looking at, what your mix is right now. In 2008, oil accounted for almost 100% of what you were trading. I'm looking at it now, and it's incredible to see how much you've wound down your trading in oil, and you're focusing more on gas and other commodities as well. Is that a trend that you have deliberately gone into and you've done, or is it because the market has dictated that?
Hi, thank you for having me. No, of course it's a trend we deliberately wanted to have. We understand, we're one of the largest trader in the world for energy in general. We have a turnover of $150 to $170 billion a year. And the way we thought about the market from the beginning was that there will be more and more relationship between gas, oil, coal with the energy transition. That's going to lead to more competition between these different elements, more different value proposal, different this and different that. So we kind of try to mix somehow our balances. We also have a strong commitment towards the energy transition. We have committed to have 50% of all our investments in the energy transition sector as opposed to traditional. We also have some oil and gas. So this is something which we kind of foreseen from day one, and we've been able to develop over the year. And my guess would be that you give it 2 or 3 years, we're probably going to be one of the largest independent power trader, because no matter what happened with the mixed power will be there, especially with AI and everything else. I think we're going to see demand increasing. So we trade power in Japan, in Australia, even in China, of course, Europe and the United States. So this is very much, you're going to see these trends continuing.
Is hydrogen coming as something that you can trade at this point?
No, I don't think. We obviously, the way we think about decarbonization is, you start with coal and then you say, what can I do about coal? So we invested in a company which transformed, for instance, solid waste into energy, which substitute coal. Then you go into the oil sector and we say, what can we do there? So we go on transportation. We have one of the largest company in the world refueling ships with bunker fuel. So we start having a different kind of product offered to ship owner. Then we also invested, of course, in renewable. We have about 6 gigs of renewable. We also invested in nature. We just recently announced a $500 million investment in nature base, and I'm very interested to connect with the person who was on stage before, because we're going to need all these satellites and imagery. Hydrogen is very expensive. You need hydrogen. You need to transform hydrogen into a form of energy which can be used. So you have ammonia. The way we play this market is not a market that we see is developed strongly yet. Japan is trying to push for it. Australia is trying to push for it. A little bit of South Korea. The US is a bit sort of mixed on this. So we're building installations which have the flexibility to have hydrogen or to have more traditional form of energy. So we do this, for instance, in Texas, in Louisiana. We also focus on carbon capture, because we think that obviously the energy sector and the hydrocarbon are going to be there for a very long time, and you have to find a way to capture the carbon.
Okay, Lorenzo, let's get into the hydrogen conversation with you. I didn't know this, but Baker Hughes has been in hydrogen since, you said, the 1960s?
That is correct.
Amazing. Okay, so what does that mean? And you were talking about the life cycle of the transition. If you looked at what natural gas cost, 30 years ago versus what it is now, LNG, and just how things have changed in economies of scale, how are you seeing those trends perhaps being mimicked when we look at hydrogen as an option?
So I think you have to go back, and when you look at the energy mix and the evolution of the energy mix over time, you can see that over the decades, it's been different forms of fuels that have taken their role.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now is, again, the evolution of the energy mix. We know energy demand is going to continue to grow, and for that, we need to make sure that the diversity of fuel types continues to grow as well. I look at natural gas and LNG. You go back to the 1970s, people were starting to talk about it. Hydrogen was also being produced in the 1970s, and in fact, we have 2,000 compressors in gray hydrogen. Natural gas started to evolve, LNG started to evolve, and today you have 20% of the energy mix that is going to be on a natural gas basis and LNG. Hydrogen, I don't think will take that long, but it will take 10 to 20 years as it evolves. And it's a natural molecule to be used in certain elements of the energy mix. It won't be suitable for everything, but it will be suitable for local dispatch, some of the mobility, transportation, some of the local distributed power generation. And there's a lot of discussion as to the color of hydrogen.
Yes,
At
so
the
whether
end
it's
of the day-
green, blue, grey, you mentioned grey.
At the end of the day, you start with gray and you can go all the way to green, and in between you have the spectrum of the rainbow. And the good thing is, as an equipment and technology provider, our equipment is agnostic to the color. However, it's the way in which you produce the hydrogen.
Yeah.
And we think that now there's a natural element of blue hydrogen. There's the element of blue ammonia, as well as being a carrier of hydrogen. And that will slowly evolve into a liquefied hydrogen and a green hydrogen going forward.
But can it replace hydrocarbons?
It will not fully replace hydrocarbons. And I think, again, you've got to look at not the fuel
Why
source.
not? Why won't it?
Why?
Too
Because
expensive, you don't see the pricing going down.
there's a pricing element, then there's also an infrastructure element, there's a regional differences, and I think we've got to move away from the aspect of villainizing a fuel type and focus on emissions. We can still use hydrocarbons. We've just got to abate the emissions, and CCUS is a key technology and a key way in which we can do that as we go through the evolution of also new energy mix. Nuclear has a role to play as well. So I think it's the abundance that we're looking for and abating the emissions, and all fuel types are good.
So Marco, what do you think?
Traders, we think about where the market goes this afternoon. So when Lorenzo talks about 10 to 15 years, this is on the horizon that doesn't even come across in our mind. So therefore, what we do is we create flexibility. I think it's way too expensive today. I think some government are trying to encourage the use of hydrogen. Europe is investing quite a lot of money trying to subsidize electrolyzer. In the US, the IRA has come out. We're not 100% sure exactly what it says, but there's uncertainty about the next presidential election. So it's going to be a bit slow. But the economics don't make sense today. Some people in the region have been producing blue and green hydrogen for a while. They've been trying to sell it. There's no offtake. There's no real market. Maybe the Japanese are showing some interest. So it's going to be very slow to be adapted. And
also to transport, right? I mean, a lot of
Yes,
countries
very
in the
complex.
region are saying we want to be a key exporter of hydrogen. The question is, how efficient is it to actually transport and then storage and so forth?
So we're quite a bit involved. As I mentioned, we have probably the largest company in the world sort of serving bunker fuel. And then you can transport it in the form of ammonia, which is sort of more liquid. But that's kind of smelly, it's dangerous, it's also a different thing. So, it's going to take a while. And people, also ship owners, don't know what they have to go for. Do they go for renewable methanol? Do they go for ammonia and so on? I think it's going to take a long time. The infrastructure are not ready. And as Lorenzo said, the investments are just absolutely massive. So I think if you really want to push transition, that's not where I would put most of the money on a global basis, because I think there are other things that can abate it kind of a lot faster.
You said something really important for me, Lorenzo. It's focusing on emissions. And this, again, is this pragmatic approach. Every time I speak to the energy sector, we have to be pragmatic. We need oil and gas. We need hydrocarbons for now. Transition's underway. Because you need to think of what the alternative means. And we're talking about whether renewables are the silver bullet. But is the actual silver bullet trying to reduce emissions and figuring out how to do it more cleanly?
In our belief, that is the silver bullet, is focusing on emissions and focusing on the pledges of net zero. The pledge of net zero...
So offsetting, basically.
Offsetting and also continuing to reduce. And there's many techniques. And I think Marco says it well. Things are going to take time. And you've got the difference here between, having to trade the energy mix today and a company that is actually investing in the technologies of tomorrow. And we're looking out with hydrogen being a source in 10, 20 years. So we're producing hydrogen turbines because you're going to need that technology that can run on hydrogen. At the same time, it's going to take some time to develop. So
it's not going to be a base load energy source.
Not going to be a base load energy source. And I think history actually is a good way of foreshadowing how we're going to evolve. And it's going to be step by step. And LNG and natural gas was the same. And it took over 40 years. And where are we today? We've got about 450 MTPA, million tons per annum of LNG. We're going to have 800 million tons per annum by 2030. Hydrogen will follow suit, and you'll start to see similar aspects of additions. But if you focus on the emissions, then you're tackling what's at the heart of the issue. Climate change is driven by emissions. So reduce the CO2, reduce the greenhouse gases, but don't villainize a fuel type.
I think it's too late. It has been villainized.
Yeah, I mean,
Marco.
there's reason to be worried, I think, just looking at the climate sort of development around the world, but I think everyone has to try their best, and I think, we know there's some good ideas like the carbon price, but that's kind of very difficult politically to have this approved across the planet. We know there is a technical solution. The silver bullet, I think, doesn't exist today. If there was ever one, I think it'd probably be fusion. I think that's
There's
the one.
a lot of conversation about that, right? And it
Yeah.
came up at COP28.
I think fusion, thanks to AI, I was speaking to some people in Oxford last week. They think it's going to save 10 to 15 years to develop the fusion, but it's still, you can't count on it. We're talking about 20 years down the road or something, and there's even uncertainty about this. So,
But there's a better probability of it being a base load.
AI is improving the probability of
Energy source.
fusion at some point becoming a source of energy.
Yeah.
It's very uncertain still.
Were you at COP28?
Yes.
Did you come as well?
Yes.
There was a lot of talk about this COP28 having a lot of people from your sector lobbying.
I wouldn't call it lobbying.
Lobbying, not lobbying, but listening, learning.
I would call it being involved in the discussion.
In the discussion.
So that we can have a better outcome.
So what did you learn from those discussions in terms of what, because there are so many voices that come up. So you had the communities. It was the first time we had so many community members that spoke about the realities of climate change and what they're experiencing. You have environmentalists, and then you have, key business leaders which need to take a very pragmatic approach to realities. So Lorenzo, for you, what was important in those conversations?
My biggest learning, and it's been this way for the last couple of years, and I think it's improving, is there's still a lack of understanding on the complexity of energy, energy mix, regional differences, and coming back to the fundamentals of chemical and physics. And at the end of the day, you need to have a dialogue around what matters and making it fair transition for all. And having all parties included in the discussion is the only way you're going to achieve
Without
that.
it being disruptive, right? Because
Correct.
people don't know what that would mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Socially.
if you look at the oil and gas industry, I think there was $1 trillion profit made last year. That money could be very useful for the transition. So if you're going to tell the oil and gas community that they shouldn't be part of the solution and they're the bad people, you're going to exclude this $1 trillion of money, which could be actually put to use to push transition. Some of those major oil companies are very good at investing in renewable, are very good at investing in solar and wind. Then you have to find solution, because once you produce solar and wind, you know that power prices at time go negative in Texas or in California or in Germany. So suddenly you have negative prices. You say, I have to pay to get energy. Maybe I should try to find something to do with it. Battery, those companies are really, really good at developing an industrial and global basis solutions. So to me, it would be a mistake to try to exclude them from the discussion.
I mean, let's also be very realistic here. I mean, when we saw Russia invading Ukraine and we saw how Europe reacted, it was like, firstly, energy security trumped everything and anything. And we saw that things were put on the sidelines because we know how important energy security is at the end of the day. And we saw the gaps, right? We saw that the certain economies that hadn't adapted enough. But how would you define energy security, Marco?
I think you're making a very good point. If you look at after the invasion of Ukraine, Europe sort of was short of gas, obviously.
Yeah.
So they started importing.
And storage was an issue, right? Like
yes, and they
storage.
started importing more coal. So, well, Europe has been giving lesson to the rest of the world about the fact that we shouldn't use hydrocarbon, we shouldn't use coal. It's when it becomes a matter of energy security, and also when it also becomes a matter of is it affordable or not. So, suddenly gas became so expensive that it was very difficult for families, especially in Southern Europe, to afford gas because the price was kind of going crazy. So they needed to have subsidies. So you're right. I think that when it comes to energy security and affordability, there's a different discussion, which is a reason why some people, hope that we're going to stop using fossil fuel soon, and that would be good from a carbon perspective. But it's not going to happen because people can't afford it. And the debate, if you go to developing nations, there's still about 1 billion people relying on coal to have power in their home. So unless you find an alternative which is priced at a similar level, it's going to be very tough. So security and affordability are always part of the element you have to take in consideration when you think about transition.
As you look at the next few years, one of the areas of focus for our company and as well as for the industry is, having seen what's happened, we need a sustainable energy development plan. And what does that mean? It is clearly sustainable from an environmental perspective, it's affordable, it's secure, and it's efficient. And that efficiency angle is something that we can tackle with AI, with some of the technology we have today, and being able to provide the next generation the energy that they need to be able to develop going forward. That's what
And I know you do a lot of the technology as well, right?
Yes. But we've got a duty from a sustainable energy development. And I think that's why all of the above strategy and focusing on emissions is so important. And we undervalue the opportunity we have on efficiency within the existing energy mix today.
So let's look at just what's happening at the moment. And I think it's important to take stock of where the oil price is right now, what's happening in the Red Sea, what's happening in this region, the geopolitical, because oil and gas prices are always intrinsically intertwined into geopolitics. It's a measure of risk aversion, growth, a plethora of things. What do you think is going to happen with the oil price right now, Marco? What are you predicting?
I think the OPEC sort of country have kept, they're trying to balance markets so that when there's an excess production, they kind of tend to reduce their production, and then when there's a deficit, they increase. So I think we're going to remain in a reasonable range. Obviously, if the conflict in the Red Sea was going to kind of blow up, that would obviously push prices above $100 a barrel. But I think at the moment, the main impact of the Red Sea sort of event is that ships have to reroute their way of going from Europe to Asia and the other way, and that's pushing the shipping cost quite a bit higher. There's a certain nervousness in the market about how this could blow up. We see essentially proxies being used to kind of wage war between different clans that could actually go a lot further, but I think there's a lot of people out there, including in the region and the US and everyone, trying to make sure this doesn't blow into kind of a full conflict. So I would expect the oil price to kind of remain within the $10 range of where they are today for the foreseeable future, unless we have a blow up. In that case, it's going to have some upside.
Lorenzo, what are you pricing in?
So he's far better positioned to say about the price.
Yeah, you just look at the crystal ball, right? He's using different
I take
metrics.
his advice. I just make sure I'm making enough equipment and services to be able to fulfill the expectations of our customers. We are living in a very geopolitical world at the moment, and I think we've got to monitor those geopolitics. It is confusing, And I hope that there's an ability to stay calm and actually moderate some of the positions that are being taken at the moment.
I hope so. Ladies and gentlemen, Lorenzo and Marco, thank you very much. Please, round of applause for my fantastic guests.
Thank you.